fantastic. I love it.
So it's great to meet you. Thank you, sir, for taking a minute out for the show.
I am so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation because you're you're talking about one of my favorite things.
Yes, sir. So before we get in to some of the favorite things that we want to talk about, I know we're getting COVID fatigue, but how did you survive that COVID time period, that 4 year window, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Um, it didn't change a lot about how we do things because we were virtual before COVID
Yeah.
and we're virtual now. But what it did do is give me a little bit of time to put some thoughts down. And I wrote a book about my experiences working with small business owners and helping them understand digital marketing. My background is in high-end marketing and advertising. I've done it for a long ass time. And there's an awful lot of the principles that I've learned over the years that are applicable regardless of the size of your business. And that's, I tried to capture those, and the book is written as a parable because, business books are boring. So I wanted to make it interesting. And I wrote it about John and his family. They owned a custom bike shop and they were getting killed by the online marketing. And decided they needed to get there, to do it themselves. And it's the story of their journey from doing nothing at all to being very successful with digital marketing and the
So
mistakes they made and the ups and downs and the tribulations, and the different members of the family took on different pieces of it, and the characters and how they developed. And there's another guy who's a outside consultant named Kyle, who's my alter ego, who comes in periodically and injects new ideas and injects different ways to think about it. I really enjoyed writing the book, and it's turned out okay, I think.
yeah. So let's get into what you do right now in 2024. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
I help I help business owners take full advantage of digital marketing.
So what did you want to be in the third grade?
What did I want to be? I wanted to be, I'm going to be age myself here. Remember Lloyd Bridges
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and Sea Hunt?
Uh-huh.
That's what I wanted to do.
That's the guy. I love it. So take me back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised? What were these foundational seeds of you getting into such a high pressure field and being as successful as you have?
Well, I tell you, I have a checkered past. Um, I was born and brought up in a rural community on an island in the Rideau River in Eastern Ontario.
Okay.
Farmers' fields in the front yard, the river in the backyard. It was idyllic, but it was also very isolated. I had no idea about so many things until I went to college. Like literally, the very first Jewish person I met was in college.
Wow. Wow.
It's like I had no idea.
Yeah.
But then again, I also had no idea. So I was a completely open sponge.
Mhm.
And my passion all through high school was music. I was a performing musician, classical music, played in the youth orchestras and symphonic bands and all that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
then I went to college with the idea of doing a Bachelor of Science in math and chemistry. Hated it. And after 1 year, I switched my major over to music, and I graduated from college with a music degree. I kept the math courses because I enjoyed math, and whenever I needed to raise my GPA, I'd take a calculus course. So that there's that.
Yeah.
But that was how I got out of school with a Bachelor of Music. And oddly enough, corporate America isn't beating your door down when you have a music degree.
Yeah.
And so I spent 6 years working in the rock and roll industry, touring with recording artists and stage managing and production and road managing and that sort of thing. Not performing on stage, but acting in the sort of the business management, project management side of that whole thing. But I
Yeah.
did this with bands that you'd recognize, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah.
And
S-
it was a conversation with I did a bunch of work with a Canadian band called Rush.
yeah.
You may be familiar with them.
Yeah.
And it was a conversation with Geddy Lee, who is the bass player and lead singer at Rush. And he was talking to me about how they had vertically integrated the band from a business point of view. Taylor Swift is doing this now, but they did this back in the 1980s. They owned their own record company, they owned their own publishing, they owned their own sound and lights, they owned their own trucks. And when they weren't using the sound and lights and trucks, they'd rent them to other bands. They used the record company to sign other artists. They did publishing for other artists. They were completely vertically integrated as a business entity. And what that conversation did for me was it opened my mind to, with my background in music, I could still have a career in business.
Yeah.
And it really has held me in good stead because when you're performing, you've got what you need to do, but you have to listen to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And if you look at music literally on a piece of paper, it's very logical and very linear. But if you perform it exactly as it's written, it's boring.
Yeah.
You have to bring both your left brain and your right brain to bear on what's on the piece of paper in order to interpret it and to create something that has interest.
Yeah.
Concepts like what makes music fantastic is dissonance. Music without dissonance is boring.
Yeah.
Marketing and being successful with marketing is about understanding the discipline and the linear aspect, the things you need to do in the order you need to do them in, but you have to interpret that laterally and you have to value and appreciate dissonance.
Yeah.
So that it's an odd background, but it really has held me in good stead throughout my career because I can always see things from different perspectives and I'm always listening to what's going on with my client, with the creative department, with the consumers, the different players in the orchestra. I am listening to what they're looking for and how they're performing in order to find the creative solution to the problem in front of me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, none of it sounds odd to me, and it almost seems as though you're kind of like a creative lawyer. Lawyers always have their hands in all these things and they know all of it. They can go and they can juggle between all of these hemispheres of thought and being, a sentient thinking being. And that's all you're saying. You have
Right.
more latitude to go into situations without fear, and you're going to
Right.
go in such in a way that's going to be probably successful. You're coming from a position of strength, is what you're doing.
Well, and it also teaches you being a performing musician also teaches you that, making a mistake is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Everybody plays a wrong note.
Yep.
Everybody hits the wrong chord. Everybody does it all the time, even experienced professional musicians. And, there's a wonderful story about a jazz pianist, Keith Jarrett,
Keith Jarrett, yeah.
and the famous solo recording of the Cole concert.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely brilliant, brilliant. One of the reasons that, and you may not know this story, but one of the reasons that that concert was so brilliant, the piano he was playing on was broken.
Wow.
He had to work around a whole bunch of keys that just didn't function.
Wow. That's crazy.
It is absolutely crazy. And yet you listen to that album and it is stunning.
Yeah. Some of the best things in life are accidental, and jazz is all about improv and going
Oh,
into chaos. And what a emblematically metaphor riddled story that is.
oh yes, absolutely. I mean, you think about it, 12 bar blues,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
It's the same chord structure. It is the same. 12 bars, and yet there are tens of thousands of amazing interpretations of that same structure and that same chord structure.
You know, another
Chord
weird,
progression.
yeah, you know, another weird story, and you can respect this, I'm sure, being Canadian. That Massey Hall show that Charlie Parker and Dizzy and that all-star group did, it was
Hmm.
one of the lowest attended events because there was a boxing match that night.
Hmm.
No one went to it.
Yep.
All watching on the telly or wherever they were at. And it's just weird how when you strip back the layers, the VH1 behind the music, what really happened when these
Right.
things were taking place, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Yeah. That's why the story of Keith Jarrett and the Cold concert just
Yeah.
boggles my mind when I think about what and he had driven from another date the night before. He was literally performing, hadn't had any sleep in 24 hours.
Yeah. That's it. That's all the context you need right there. Wow. So in your life of being highly driven and highly fueled and accomplished, who's been your hero? Who's been that inspiration?
It's funny. I really don't think of things in those terms. Um, I'm always I mean, to this day, I mean, the gray hair is quite legitimate. I am, I have celebrated many, many anniversaries of my 49th birthday. And I am still absolutely fascinated and curious about what's going on. I'm deeply involved in a number of projects using machine learning to improve what we're doing with marketing. I mean, it's just fascinating. So it's just, I am always looking at the next interesting thing. When I was in Toronto, they came to us all, and I was working for the Toronto office of a New York ad agency, and they came and said, you know, we're looking for an account person, an account executive, to work with Pillsbury because Pillsbury is launching Green Giant canned vegetables in Latin America, and they want a North American trained advertising executive to work with the ad agencies down in South America. Are there any volunteers? And so what do I do? Having just gotten engaged, I raised my hand and said, I'll go. And that's how I ended up being in Venezuela
Wow.
for 3 years and working with Pillsbury, launching Green Giant canned vegetables in Latin America. It was a fascinating experience. Um, and then, so for me, it's not about an individual. It's about what's the next opportunity that pops up that I can grab onto and run with.
So, what is the motivation for you every day to wake up and to do the work that you do? You're obviously doing things that are affecting a lot of people, but you also have to evolve as a human being yourself. What is that collective gumption for you every day?
For me, the my I'm very passionate about helping people. I have all this experience. I've been doing this for a long time and quite a bit of success. And marketing is a fact of life for a business owner. And so many people are getting taken advantage of because of their ignorance and because, you know, there are people who are just not as ethical as they should be. And my passion is to help business owners be successful with marketing. 14 years ago, I had the opportunity. My assignment was managing the digital budget for Toyota, and in Northern California, and I had an opportunity to buy a vendor, and I wanted to get out of that heavy duty rat race, and so I bought a company that was a digital production studio that had been one of my vendors. And then I converted that company into a focus around, you know, website design and development. The reason for that is when I look at websites, and this hasn't changed, right? This is as common today as it was then. When I look at websites and digital marketing campaigns, the most common problem I see is an absence of strategy. And my skill set is built around understanding strategy, understanding marketing strategy and consumer driven marketing and that sort of thing. So I've been applying that knowledge and experience to the key pivot point of a website. The website is one of only two digital assets that a business owns. The other one is their email list. Everything else is rented land, right? You own your email list, you own your website. Um, and most of them are terrible. And they're terrible because of this. I mean, they may be pretty, but that doesn't make them good.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the music without dissonance. It's certainly not objectionable, the pentatonic scale, right?
Yeah.
It's certainly not objectionable, but it's boring.
Yeah.
And, you know, an effective website has an underlying foundational strategy. And so that's what I've been focused on. And now we're extending that out into other areas of digital marketing. One of the AI projects that I'm working on is a key way to understand strategy is to understand your customer avatar and to understand the buyer's journey.
Yeah.
Now, I did this when I was running big budgets with big brands and that sort of thing, did this all the time. And that's one of the ways these big brands do their marketing so much better than the average small business owner. It's because they've got these resources,
Yeah.
but it's expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, a typical study to do that sort of thing might be 50 grand. I'm working with one of my old colleagues who's a senior market researcher who does these $50,000 studies. Um, and much to my wife's amazement, she's, you know, people like me, so they they're always willing to help out. So she's worked on building an interview guide. I have another colleague who's a prompt engineer, and he's working on the prompt engineering, and we're building an AI tool that's going to allow business owners to use the interview guide to interview a half a dozen, 6 to 10 of their existing customers, get on the phone, record the call, just use the interview guide, ask the questions, get people talking. We put those recordings into the large language model and we generate out of those 6 to 10 recordings customer avatars and buyer's journey, a customer avatar and a buyer's journey map that a business owner can then use to understand how to drive their marketing. When you think about it, I'll use a wheel as an analogy. The website is the hub. The marketing channels are the spokes. And the content and messaging strategy is the rim that holds it all together.
Yeah.
Website, pretty straightforward. Understand media, but how do I create that content and messaging strategy? How do I know how to get the right message to the right person at the right time?
Yeah.
That's where the avatar and the journey map fit into this. And where this process is going to make that key strategic resource affordable and achievable for a six-figure business owner who's trying to figure out how to, drive their business forward with marketing. Is this making sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely it is. Yeah. So I'm curious, in all of these endeavors that you've had in your life, all of the evolution and achievement, what are you the proudest of?
I think the thing that makes me proudest is people I've worked with over the years, clients I've had 20 years ago, employees that have worked for me 25, I'm still in touch with them. They still take my calls. They still reach out to me, ask me questions. They're still, I think what I'm proudest of is I've had a positive impact on a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
And that gives me great joy. and it keeps me motivated because I want to keep doing it. I really I'm passionate about helping, particularly small business owners, first of all, avoid getting taken advantage of, you know, and understanding the principles of marketing helps a lot of stuff fall off the table. So they stop doing things that aren't actually working because their nephew told them to.
Right. Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone sees you in a certain light or a role. Family, friends, clients, all of your readers, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I don't know. I tell a mean dad joke.
It's good for you. I like that.
I, Somebody once described me, and I think this is accurate, that I reek of common sense.
Yeah.
And I strive for that. I try to keep things simple. I try to keep things clear. A lot of this stuff can get real complicated real fast, but at its essence, I mean, there's a funny story I heard years ago. A guy named Peter Lynch, he was a financial executive and he was managing a large mutual fund for Fidelity. It was called the Magellan Fund. It was huge.
Yeah.
And a business reporter was interviewing him, and he asked him, "So you've had great success with this fund. What do you attribute your success?" And this reporter was expecting a long and involved and complex answer, and what Lynch said was, "Water the flowers and prune the weeds."
There you go. I get it.
And so much of life is about being able to have the strength of character to be able to actually say that. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've said no to clients. They'll call me up and want to do something, and I'm like, man, I'd love to take your money, but God, that's a bad idea. And here are the four reasons why,
Yeah.
and this is maybe why I've had clients for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. How many website companies do you know of that have have done 3 and 4 different websites for the same client over the course of 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. So I'm fascinated by your musical background, and I gotta know, you mentioned Rush, heavy, heavy name in music, of all of music. What's the best concert you've ever watched or been around, energy wise, just the whole thing?
The best concert that I was involved with, it was in Buffalo, New York. And I don't know if you remember, but the Who were on tour,
Hmm.
and there was a riot at a concert in Cincinnati,
Yeah.
and kids were killed, right? Kids died.
Yep.
Well, 3 days later, their next date was that show in Buffalo that I was working.
Wow.
And they performed for 4 straight hours.
Wow.
And they dedicated the show because it wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
It,
Sure.
they didn't, but they really felt bad about it. And
Yeah.
it was so passionate.
Yeah.
It was such an amazing performance, such an amazing show. They were so amped up, and it was phenomenal. Just a phenomenal experience.
I love it. So if anyone wants to pick up your book, reach out, learn more about anything that you're doing, if you want to hold it up again, where's the best place to go?
Well, the book is available on Amazon.com. It's Journey to Success, Digital Marketing for Small Business Owners. And if they will, I love to hear from people. I love to talk to people. And if they go to VIPchatwithJames.com, that's VIPchatwithJames.com, they can grab a few minutes on my calendar. I love to talk about digital marketing, websites, anything that makes sense, for a business who's trying to figure out this whole, how do I continue to grow in this crazy digital world.
Yeah. Wonderful. James, this has been great. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time, your passion, your story. I appreciate it. And we did pretty good with time. We're in good shape.
Yeah, we're in great shape.
I
Joe,
love
it's
it.
been an absolute pleasure.